Okay, so we're gonna start this icy blonde hair tutorial by parting her off. I always like to go off of my client's natural part, so it's really good to ask them where they part their hair, where their hair lays naturally, and go off of that. If they are a tousler and they can go either which way, then I always go off of the middle so that no matter where they part their hair, it's going to look amazing. And today we have mixed up Joico Blonde Life with 20 volume, and we added 1/16 ounce of Olaplex for a little bit of protection. This is going to ensure that we get really good lift with her hair, but also keep it really safe as we do it. And this client specifically hasn't had her hair done since March, so she does have quite a bit of regrowth. Our goal is to get her as blonde as we can, give her a nice platinum, icy blonde tone. She really likes the cool tone, so that's what we're going for today. But you can see that since she has quite a bit of regrowth, she does have a lot of contrast in her hair at the moment, and her ends are faded out to more of like a yellow toned blonde. So we're really gonna try to knock through that today. And I think a lot of people get really intimidated by overlapping, and they get scared that you're not supposed to, or that you're gonna fry your client's hair off. And trust me, you can if done the wrong way. But in today's video, we're gonna be teaching you how to safely get your client to that icy blonde color. So for this specific video, we're going to be doing a full highlight pattern, and I like to vary my patterns based off of the result I want. So since we're wanting to do something that's pretty bright, I'm going to be giving her maximum brightness, maximum blonding, and we're gonna start at the nape of the neck and work our way up. So I'm starting by doing a baby light right here at the nape, and I'm going to be taking it down as far as I need to, mainly focusing on that regrowth and then feathering through the golden ends to kick them out a little bit. The tools I'm using right now are of course Framar foils. I'm also using my Jessi Styles long blonding comb. We do offer 2 different comb sizes for highlighting. I like using the longer one for baby lights because I do feel like I have a little more control with it. And then our shorter version I like to use for teasy lights. Up until about mid-ear, the head has been narrow enough where I can focus them all in the center, but if I continued in that pattern, then we wouldn't get any of the sides. So now I'm gonna start transitioning to the sides, and all I'm doing is doing a straight line, and it's almost going to be bricklaying with the pattern I was doing down the middle. And since you already have a bunch of foils in there, they usually work really well as a base to support these foils as well. I'm gonna start by doing about 2 or 3 foils up here on this side, and then I'm gonna transition over to the other side. Now that I've gone up each side with about 2 or 3 foils, I'm heading back to the middle, and now my pattern is going to be 2 or 3 foils in the middle, 2 or 3 foils on the left, and then 2 or 3 foils on the right. And this is going to give me a good pattern that accentuates brightness but also covers everything, so when she pulls her hair up, she's going to be bright all over. She does have a pretty dark base naturally. I would say she's about a level 5. And her regrowth does show pretty quickly, so even though we are doing an icy blonde, I still want this to be low maintenance for her. It's not like we're going in and painting lightener straight on the scalp. We're doing baby lights because we do want it to look natural but still really bright and cool. So I know a lot of times it can be intimidating to overlap blonde onto previously lightened hair, and there's definitely a time and a place for it. But there is no other option to get lighter than to overlap, so you just have to make sure that you're doing it safely. For example, we did add Olaplex in this lightener. That's going to help protect the hair as we lift, keep it really healthy and strong, and while it may dilute your processing time, it's always worth it in the end. I also used a lower developer. I never go over 20 volume when I'm overlapping because that is just asking for trouble. 30 or 40 volume is gonna blow open that cuticle, whereas 20 lifts pretty evenly and stays at that level. And since she already is light, I don't need anything more than that on those light ends. And then if I do let it process long enough, it's also gonna lift her regrowth to where I want it to be as well. And especially since that is virgin hair, it's going to lift beautifully with a 20 volume. When it comes to blonding, there are a lot of different stitch patterns you can use. I'm a big fan of baby lights just because I think they do look the most natural. Since we are wanting her to look pretty solidly blonde, baby lights are going to be our best bet because they're going to look like they literally grew from her head that way. But if we were wanting a more defined blonde with texture and dimension, you could do a bigger stitch pattern and do chunkier highlights in a sense, not necessarily chunky in the sense that you're picking up more hair, but just the space you leave in between the baby lights. That's gonna give you more dimension, whereas right here, I'm doing a really fine baby light so it almost looks like a slice, and that's going to give us a more solid appearance. It's important to let clients understand that depending on their hair type, it may take a few sessions to achieve the icy blonde. Since she is blonde with just some regrowth, it is going to be pretty easy within a session or two. But at the same time, depending on how the hair lifts, their texture, their density, and their natural level, it could take more than that. So just make sure you prepare your clients for that, because this icy cool blonde is considered an unnatural tone, and it's kind of a fashion color in a sense because you have to use toners to get what you're wanting. You can't lift hair out to icy blonde. It lifts out to pale yellow, and then you have to custom tone it to achieve that result. So because of that, it kind of becomes a color correction with some hair types. And even though she has natural regrowth right here and faded blonde ends, the more regrowth they have, the more challenging it can be, because if that regrowth extends down and almost looks like an ombre, you're gonna have more to work against, and that could take a few more sessions. I always like to start in the back of the head first, because if it does process quicker, you can remove the back foils, put them in an Olaplex treatment and let it sit while the front continues to process. And this makes it a little bit easier so you don't have to use a squirt bottle to squirt foils out. It's just easier to dunk them back into the sink. And then also keep in mind that we may bump up our developer as we work our way up the top of the head. Depending on how quick of a foiler you are, you can start with a 10 or a 20 and move your way up to 30. Since I started with a 20, I think I'm gonna stick with it and then just rinse the back when it's done, because I don't wanna put anything higher than 20 on her ends. Even though we don't have a middle section anymore, I'm still gonna vary by doing 2 or 3 on this side and then jumping over and doing 2 or 3 on the other side. Because if you get too heavy on one side, it's gonna be harder to maneuver and work on the other side because the foils could be in the way. Now that I'm in the triangular section, I'm starting at the base, doing a highlight right here in the center, and then I'm gonna be working my way up that triangle. As I reach this triangular section, I'm starting at the base and just working my way up. This section is really great for clients that have stubborn calyx or for hair that splits in the back. This is going to be your chance to really pack those foils in and give them a blonde appearance towards the top of the head. Okay, so we're now heading into the front sections of the hair. This is a really important area for most blonde clients because this is really where they see the most brightness when they look in the mirror, and when they pull their hair back, they want to be able to really see that blonde. So we're gonna be doing a really focused hairline. So as you can see right here, I have a slice sectioned off, and I'm going to take my foil, hold the hair out with tight elevation, and put my foil underneath, holding it tight the whole time. And then we're going to paint this whole section. And you'll notice that I now transferred to a smaller brush. I was using the larger Goldwell brush for most of the foils, and now that I'm doing hairline, I'm doing the smaller Goldwell brush. I love the blend that these brushes give, and the small one's really good for hairline details because I can get in closer without having my product bleed. And it gives me a really accurate idea of where my product's going. I'm just going to be doing a few slices brick laid, reaching over to the top of the head. Okay, now that I've done a few slices here in the front, I'm transitioning more towards the top of her bang area. Still doing slices for maximum brightness. And if you notice, I am using a different foil color for these pieces specifically. These pieces are going to process a bit quicker, even though I did them after these, only because the hair up here is so fragile. And since it is her bang area, I want to make sure that we keep these pieces healthy. Okay, so now that I'm done doing all of the slices in front, I'm going to fold the foils over, and now we're going to start transitioning into baby lights. I did a lot of slices here because I do want her to be pretty bright, but if your client wanted a more natural looking front, you could just do highlights and not do slices, or you could just do a few slices and then transition into baby lights a little bit sooner. I'm a big fan of working on an angle, especially when it comes to the front of the head, because as we all know, the head shape is round and you really want to follow the curvature of the head so that all of the hairs lay really naturally. Sometimes if you just go straight up the side, it ends up looking stripy and it doesn't look as good as it could if you did it this way. When it comes to baby lights, I have a few tips and tricks that have really helped me perfect them. In hair school, I feel like we learned to traditionally highlight one way, and then baby lights became a trend and it kind of changed the game. There's nothing wrong with doing a thicker highlight or a traditional highlight, but baby lights have become so popular because it gives our clients that really natural look and also gives them longevity when paired with a root smudge. Baby light is such a funny term because it is something that's trending right now, but it really just means a fine highlight. And I'm a fan just because I feel like finer sections tend to lift easier. The chunkier highlights tend to lift a little bit warmer and they take longer to process. And also, like we had talked about before, they just blend a lot better and it gives your client a really natural look, even if you're doing a color like this one. When it comes to mixing ratios for lightener, I always like to start with about a scoop or a scoop and a half. I never like to go over that just because lightener can swell the more that you mix up, especially if you're using a higher volume developer. So I always start off with 1 scoop and work my way up from there. This piece between the front and the back sections can be kind of tricky. If you're doing a more dimensional look, you could easily leave this out to give more depth right here. But since we are doing a brighter blonde, I'm going to go ahead and foil that so that I can have maximum brightness in this section. Saturation is key when it comes to sections like this around the face. You want to make sure you saturate really well. So we're going to start by saturating down here, moving our way to the top. And then I always like to maneuver my foil. For example, I'm tilting my foil to the right to get this section, and then I'm going to tilt it the opposite direction to get the left section. And you can see that I'm also going in and feathering to kind of help soften the line. This is totally fine to do as long as you saturate first. If you start with feathering, then it may be a little bit warm because it isn't saturated enough. So you want to make sure you saturate first and then feather second. You'll notice that a lot of clients tend to have baby hairs around the hairline like this. That can be due to stress, hormones, having a baby, medications, anything like that. And you want to naturally go in and grab these and make them light, which is okay, but sometimes enhancing those darker hairs can actually make them stand out a little bit more. It's kind of like if you think about when you contour and highlight your face, if you contour, it makes it recede, and if you highlight, it stands out. So if the baby hairs are really, really delicate, highlighting them with lightener may make them more obvious. So use your judgment depending on your client's hairline and decide if it's best to leave them out or include them in the foil. Okay, so now that she is all in foils, I'm going to be mixing up a shampoo cocktail, and we're going to be saturating all of her ends with this. The reason we're doing this is because you can see that her ends are a little bit faded gold, and since I'm trying to eliminate as much dimension as possible, this is going to help kick out those gold ends without incubating them in a foil, so it will be more gentle on her hair, but it's also going to help lift it out a little bit. You do have to be careful when doing this because it can look splotchy if you don't blend it the right way, especially because you're going up into the dark areas. We really are just using this to pop it out. It's not going to be an exact science. You're just going to be basically covering everything that's dropped out in this shampoo wash. And you could do this at the bowl as well, but I do want it to sit on a little bit longer, so I'm going to be doing it while she's in foils. Okay, so we are now ready to go tap and tone her at the bowl. So I'm going to be mixing up her tap, which is going to be Shades EQ Gloss 6N, and I'm going to do mostly 6N. I'm doing 12 grams of that, and then I'm going to add a little bit of 6NA. I'm gonna do about 3 grams, taking it to about 15 grams total. And then I'm gonna even that out equal parts, taking it up to 30 grams with the processing solution. The reason I'm choosing to do this is because no matter what I'm doing on my client, whether it's a tap, a shadow, or a smudge, I always use their natural color so we have a really nice grow out with no warm tones coming through. The 6N is really the tone I'm looking for, and the 6NA is going to help counteract any warmth we achieved while lifting. For the toner, we're also going to be using Shades EQ Gloss again. They finally have their level 10s out, which I am so excited about. So we're going to be doing half an ounce of the 10VV, half an ounce of 9P, a dash of 9V, and a dash of 10N. The reason I'm doing 10N is because I don't want it to go too purple, but I do have enough V and P in there for it to get as ashy and cool as I would like it to. And we're gonna even that out equal parts as well. So we're taking that up to 3 ounces total. So with my clients that like to stay really blonde to the root, I still go in and do a little bit of toner at the base. The reason being is because I think that doing this makes the color look a little more expensive, it blends better, and they have lower maintenance, but they're not necessarily going to know I did this. It's just gonna help it blend and look a little bit softer. So we're going to use a technique called a root tap right here. I'm taking my brush and I'm just tapping. So as you can see, I'm not extending my brush down and painting on. I'm just barely tapping to diffuse the line. And I'm going around the perimeter. I parted her hair off of her natural part and then down the center and the back. And I always like to do the perimeter first, and then I go work on the inside of the hair. Okay, so now that that's been applied, I'm gonna come back to the front section and I'm going to tap everything that we sliced. And this is up to you if you want them to have a heavier hairline or a bigger mini piece, you could just leave these pieces alone. But I personally feel like it looks best to at least tap them a little bit because it helps it blend better. And this isn't going to sit very long. It's just gonna help diffuse it so that it blends really well with the rest of the baby lights. Okay, so that root has been sitting for a few minutes, and we're now gonna be applying the Shades EQ gloss to the ends. This stuff usually works pretty quick, so when working with shades, make sure you watch it. I always say there's no real rule of thumb with how long you should keep these toners on. You just need to watch it and see what the hair's doing. With the root tap, I always say root taps really only need to be on like 3 to 5 minutes because it's not anything too dramatic. With smudges and shadows, you do leave those on a little bit longer. And then the toner really is just playing it by ear and seeing how the hair's taking it.